Oh, hold on a second. Wait a minute. Okay, I think I'm live. This is Donald Jeffries coming from just outside the swamp-infested Washington, D.C. as we do every Friday at this time. I think I'm live. I have a strange error message, which I don't normally get. So hopefully, that's weird. I've never seen that. Oh, I know what that is. That's from X. Sorry about that. That's coming from X, where my account has been hacked. So obviously, we can't go live there because my account is in limbo somewhere. We have a guest that was on the show, I don't know how long ago, maybe a couple years ago or so. I know her as Dana Duda. She's part of the Rotting Jewels YouTube channel. She does some really interesting work, and I'm sure we'll have a great conversation. So Dana, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. How are you?
Fine, fine. It's good to see you again. So explain, we might have talked about this before, but as I tell people all the time, I've never been a normie. I've been a radical my entire life. I was questioning things as a kid. And since the time I was a teenager, I was completely radical. I just keep getting more radical. So I never had my toes in normal waters. How about you? Were you once a normal person before you started going down these rabbit holes, or did you have some kind of epiphany somewhere?
I would say I definitely had an epiphany. I mean, obviously, I think conventionally I was, different, but I was a critical care nurse during, Corona, and
Hmm.
it really rocked my world. I saw a lot of things that people try to gaslight me and say that didn't happen, but I think learning in real time the incompetence of the government because I worked night shift and obviously there was, a high demand and I also traveled. We would come in and the protocols had changed 3 or 4 times by the time my shift started and it's like, okay, so clearly nobody knows what's going on. And also watching the very clear, I would say, subversion in regards to the protocols and when all of that changed. And it was just kind of hush hush. And I'd really like to be engaged with my patients and their families. It's really important to me. I treat my patients like they're my family members. That almost gets me fired many times. But through all of that, and then when they were trying to force the not bioweapon on everybody to keep their jobs, uh, I just, I don't know. Something kind of broke in my brain, I think, being around all that tragedy and death. Because, then again, I'm not saying that what you were told is what happened. I don't think that's the case. I would love to know where those TikTok nurses were working at because where I was working at, we had to use garbage bags as our
Hmm.
gowns, and we got one mask a week. So I mean, there were things going on. I think there was a lot of funny money moving around, but I think just being around all that tragedy and trauma, and then, the stuff with the bioweapon or not bioweapon, and then everybody just acting like nothing happened. It's like the public has this short term memory of a goldfish.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. That's so. It's coming back now. I'm sure that's what we must have talked about at the time. So, are you still a critical care nurse? Are you still in nursing?
No, I haven't been in a hospital since one of my parents recently passed away.
Yeah.
I just can't deal with it. It's, the whole people acting like nothing happened. And when I say people, I'm saying like healthcare, like the healthcare workers acting like nothing happened. And I know that a lot of individuals left and there was already a shortage. I acknowledge that patient to staff ratios were already insane. But there was such a blatant sense of distrust with my patients, and rightfully so. Obviously, I think with an age gap disparity, there's that, sort of social norm of trusting authority. And, so someone in a white coat has authority. And so they're not
Mhm.
really used to questioning things. And I think that some of that has changed. And it was just doctors and nurses not acknowledging that, and also patients that were coming in who I concurred from my assessment and tests that were run that they were injured by the not bioweapon, that they were basically called crazy and recommended to psychiatrists. And it was very dehumanizing and degrading. So,
Absolutely was. So you didn't have any dance. You didn't get to dance in any choreographed productions that you were in. I figure out. I worked in a hospital for a long time. If I can, where that could have taken place because we don't know where this room in the hospital. Unless they went in the cafeteria or something. Maybe I just it did. But there were patients around. So you didn't say anything like that, then I guess, huh?
I know, and I remember, and I saw that, and I was like, "Where are those hoes working?" Because like, we don't have supplies, and, like, we're running around trying to help each other out, and, it's and that shows that in its own way, it was a psyop. I acknowledge that.
Absolutely.
I think most of it was related to money laundering, quite frankly. That's what I think a lot of it was this, sort of whether it's, I wouldn't say endowments, but, government grants, whatever the case may
No, the
be.
CARES
And
Act, the stimulus funds, everything. We know what they did. I mean,
y
they killed.
yeah.
I mean, and one of the people they killed was my brother. I've talked about it a lot of times. He died from from COVID protocol. He wasn't sick at all, and they gave him remdesivir and put a ventilator on him against my wishes. But they quarantined him, so I couldn't see him. And I've heard from lots of other people after that happened. I talked about it, and thank goodness, how many we don't know how many people they killed because
No.
of that. And I'm saying all this, so I will be taking on the show from YouTube immediately after putting it on my Rumble channel because otherwise I'll lose my YouTube account too. So it's a delightful thing. X is gone. I'm shadow banned on Facebook. YouTube, I have to watch what I say here, otherwise they'll suspend my account. So we'll be seeing this on Rumble if you missed the live show. But well, that's interesting. You're right in the center of it. So yeah, that must have been mostly what we talked about last time. And Chris Graves is your editor. Chris, I think Chris is the one who introduced me to you or knew about you. Nobody's heard from Chris for a while, and he's not showing up in the chat again either. So if you're out there, Chris, contact somebody. But anyway, if anybody has heard from him, let me know. But this inspired you to because looking at your Rotting Jewels channel, that's not just about this. It looks like
No, I don't
you
talk about this at all. I
yeah,
mean, if other people ask me about like my backstory, that's when I will discuss it. And I try to use my words carefully. That's why I say like bioweapon,
yes,
just because I know that the algorithm is not friendly to the topic. But when I got off the road from doing travel work, I took a very brief reprieve. It was maybe like a month or 2 months. And during that time, that was when I started just, I'd put on podcasts or audiobooks, and I was trying to just study history in different ways. And that was something that you and I had talked about in regards to monsters from the id, the occult origins of feminism, Mary
mhm,
Shelley, Frankenstein, all of that stuff.
yes, yes,
And
yes,
so with all of that, I read the book The Brothers by Alan Dulles, realized, what
mhm.
we actually did in Vietnam. That blew my mind. And from there, I couldn't stop. It was just kind of a ball that didn't stop rolling, and it was rolling downhill. Devil's Chessboard. Oh, I can't think of it. It's the one about the Bush dynasty. That book, it's huge.
By Baker, this guy Baker. Oh, what's his name?
Yes.
I can't. Yeah,
Mhm.
okay, I can't remember.
That's the book.
The other two are by David Tell. And well, hopefully you'll find your way to one of my books. But when you get to real hidden history, you'll discover that David Talbot's good, but he's kind of our connection to the establishment because he was a mainstream guy and he exposed the dullest things. But he's. I mean, I know him kind of. He deleted me from Facebook during COVID. When I was before they started shadow banning me there, I lost a lot of people. Oh, good to see Ellen Corley here, Karen Carpenter, Don Lambert, lots of people in there, Rocky. So people are still coming here. So and at this point, like I said, we can talk about anything once. We've already destroyed the YouTube archive version here because I'll definitely have to take this down right away. I don't want to lose this because at some point I'll have no way to contact people other than uh, through Substack. And we have UIY that says, "What is the guest primary website platform?" That would be is it writingjewels.com or what's your platform?
So I'm actually primarily on YouTube. I'm also on Twitter under Dana Duda, and I have a link tree, so it's all in my link
Oh,
tree. It makes it pretty easy.
Chris
Instagram
Grace
as
shows
well.
up. You
Oh,
you
there he
brought him
is.
out. You brought him out of hibernation. Hello, Chris. We're wondering about you. Hoping you're okay. You must have heard Dana was going to be in the show. There we go. We brought him out. That's good to see. Um, yeah. So we'll give you plenty of time to promote that. So talk about when you your YouTube channel has. I tried to figure it out. I was looking some of it. Um, what are you, I mean, what are you mostly investigating? I do want to hear about now. I'm black pilled for the most part, or very cynical, but I maintain some hopium. I watched a lot of Frank Capra films, so I'm still starry eyed sometimes about RFK Jr. And I like the way Tucker Carlson's turned around. And Candace Owen is my latest. I watch her all the time, and I know you're going to disillusion me. I mean, I know somebody's behind her, I'm sure, but um, so go ahead, destroy the illusion with Candace Owens. Tell me about her father was in charge of Sandy Hook or something. What are we looking at there with her?
Well, so as far as what, I research, and I think that this was actually the topic that we focused on last time was Dave McGowan, our affinity
Yes,
for Dave
yes,
McGowan.
absolutely. Yep.
He is my greatest inspiration, and so I primarily research a cult. It's called the Process Church of the Final Judgment, and
Sure.
in researching that cult, you have to have a good understanding of
Was
Scientology.
that Michael Aquino? Was that Michael Aquino
No,
there?
he was the Temple of Set.
Okay, okay.
So with that group, which I won't go off on that tangent, but they come from Scientology, and so having that historical knowledge because they started their little spin-off faction in the early 60s, I know Scientologies, that's what I call their language, the way that they talk, when I see
Mm.
it. And one of my dear friends, Echo Cat, had pointed out to me one day, he goes, "You should look into this Scientologist that's really tight with Candace Owens. His name is John Mappin." And I said, "Oh, I know who he is. I like to troll these people on Twitter every now and again." And I went and looked, and he is still now today one of her very biggest promoters. Some people may know him. He owns Camelot Castle in the UK. This was King Arthur's former castle. He also uses it when it's not operating as a hotel as a Scientology recruiting center. Now, it's not under the term Scientology, it's under one of their front groups, the Citizens Commission for Human Rights, or CCHR. Him and his wife. There have been many, testimonies online about this recruitment going on. And he is also very big into Q. Sometimes he waves a flag on top of the castle in homage of Q. It's just white and blue with a giant Q on it. And he is also what is termed in Scientology a whale, which means he's one of their largest donors. So he's essentially like a pay pig or a cash cow. And he was a very, very large donor to Trump's campaign. Now, I don't really know how that works. This was during Trump's first run. I don't know how that works with somebody in another country donating, but regardless, he was a big Trump guy, and he was good friends with Charlie Kirk. So
Mm.
that relationship, obviously many people know the late Charlie Kirk had Turning Point USA, but they also opened up Turning Point UK, and this is where some people, depending on which story Candace is telling about how she met George, this is where they met at the initial dinner, funding meeting at the Royal Automobile Club. There's some sus Masonic history with that place as well. Um, this is where they meet, and apparently from there everything is sort of sunshine and rainbows. Now when Candace tells this story, because we can't get Charlie's version, it's she was talking to Charlie and she didn't feel like she was at home here in America, and she had this pulling to the UK. She had this desire to go there. And per her words, and she's actually struck my YouTube channel for including this with a very strange connection with John Mappin saying that it was harassment. That John Mappin and his wife Irina, that they were the closest friends and lone donors to Turning Point UK. Now, what that means, I don't know because she's backpedaled and changed her story so many times. But her and Charlie go to the UK. They open up Turning Point. She meets George. Now, if you ask her, it's love at first sight. If you ask George, there are numerous interviews, including it is I think it's Aquinas Pintus, I think. I'm butchering the name, where George says that there was nothing romantic at all. That they essentially, talked on the phone and then they FaceTime quite a bit, just kind of getting an understanding of, their life, their politics, religion, etc. And then one day, in what was it? I think 18 days, 17 days, whatever that time frame is, that he just called her up and said that he decided that he wanted to marry her, asked her, and she said yes. To me, this speaks to the nature of a arranged marriage, in my opinion, and I think that regardless of people's opinions on it, I think that there's good arguments for it sometimes. It's good and bad. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I don't think that it's as organic or romantic as it's sometimes painted out to be. Obviously, I could be wrong. I'm not involved in their life or
Well,
their family.
talk about who he is. He's from England. Well, what? Because I've heard various things about him. Who is George? What's his background?
So George comes from so his father is I think is Baron. I can't remember his dad's first
Okay.
name. I used to be able to rattle all of this off, but he is in the House of Lords.
Okay.
And so somebody had corrected me not too long ago. He's not a lifetime peer. Uh, I don't know how long his time in the peerage will last, and I don't know how that's going to work when it's time for George. I don't know what the age restrictions are on the House of Lords. All of that's kind of confusing to me. But he doesn't come from humble means, despite what
Oh,
they
it's
try to
commoner.
paint it out as.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he comes from somebody that, his father is a member of the House of Lords. And there's some videos that have kind of went into this. I don't really think that they went into it deep enough, but George was part of the Bullingdon Club, which many people, I think, fairly compare it to Skull and Bones. It's, very prestigious sort of fraternity where they mock homeless people by having these people beg for money. They pull out wads of cash, they burn it in front of them.
Oh,
They're
wow.
banned from certain restaurants because they know that these young men are going to come in and act extremely inappropriately. There's been some commentary about sexual impropriety and things like that, which I think is just the nature of those type of institutions. So his money, his family, he's had a few businesses in the past, and his businesses seem to kind of be mired in controversy. He was supposed to take over Parlor. That kind of fell through, but that
Mhm.
was also around the time of January 6th, which I think is really suspicious
Mhm.
considering everything else. And no, I don't believe it was an actual, I think it was a Fed operation, period. I
Mhm.
think there's plenty of evidence to support that. And I
Mhm.
think that he was part of that because Parlor was heavily involved in a lot of that stuff. That's how a lot of people were communicating at that time. He's had a few other businesses. I know there's the Red Kite Group. I can't remember all of the other ones. One was a very large polling platform. So obviously, with politics, that's going to be helpful, right? Depending on Candace's aspirations, because I don't think that it's necessarily his. He seems to not really want to be in the foreground, so to speak. Um, but I mean, that's, sort of his background. I mean, I could go into more detail. I just can't remember all of his businesses off the top of my head. But
Right.
he doesn't come from humble means, I think is my
Right.
biggest point. Um, and
And
so
it's kind of how much older is he than her? And it's kind of a, I mean, like I'm not saying anything, but somebody, how many members of the House of Lords are married to Black American women? It just seems kind of an odd connection to happen so quickly like that. I mean,
I
what
agree.
was, I mean, so is he much older than Candace? What's the age difference? Yeah.
I think he's younger. I think he's a couple of
Oh,
years younger than her.
okay, okay.
And
Well,
don't
that's
get me
interesting.
wrong, I mean, Candace is she's a very attractive woman, I'm not
Sure,
making
yeah.
any judgments, like,
No.
objectively, speaking, it's just the sins of omission and her
Mhm.
retelling because I mean, I want to say after I brought forth my research about her family, which until I brought it forward, it was very hidden. People did not
Mhm.
want it coming out, and I received a lot of grief for it. But up until that time, I wanna say it took probably a month. Then she changed the story to it was Paul Joseph Watson from, formerly
Infowars.
InfoWars.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, she said that he was the one that introduced her to
Really?
George because she doesn't wanna talk about John Mappin. Now, why does she not wanna talk about John Mappin, and why was the video struck from my channel? Well, that's because John Mappin is in Epstein's little black book. Seems that that would be something that someone might want to address. Um,
Mhm.
he did address it, I think, probably about a month and a half ago. It was, one of Candace's because Candace has created her own ecosystem of influencers. I think it's
Mhm.
really interesting to watch all of this unfold in real time. One woman, who has a pretty big following on X, she, said, "Oh, like, everybody's saying that Candace is trying to hide this, and then John replied to that. It seemed very staged in the framing of it, and it was very sympathetic and like, "Oh, we've never avoided the question," but they have, and I can prove it that they've avoided it many times. And obviously, John just denies that there's any knowledge of that and that, somebody was, trying to besmirch his name. And yes, her husband was also close with Andrew Tate.
Okay, I
And she's
wouldn't put
also
that. Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
also done, a lot of I'm sorry, simping for Harvey Weinstein. I'm sorry, guys. Like I understand that I understand the allure. She's a very attractive African American woman. She pretends that she has conservative values. I would highly disagree. And she can be very engaging. She's obviously talented, right? She doesn't have one of
Mm.
the top podcasts in the world because she's not. I'm not
Mhm.
saying that, but the fact of the matter is that when you actually look into everything, she's very disingenuous. And her history itself is it just puts a lot of things into
Well,
question,
what I'm
and
what I'm what I'm struck by listening to this is how similar what you're saying is and how you're presenting it is to her own research that she's done on Erica Cook
yes,
and,
yes,
Macron's wife or husband or whatever the hell he is. Very similar.
yes, thank you. That's exactly my point. I'm like,
Really?
I didn't even wanna go into it, like, I wanted to avoid the topic altogether, and I refused to get back into it. I'm like, "You somebody else take the torch, I don't wanna deal with it anymore." But when I was, trying to kind of look into her, because if I'm gonna dig into Mappin and all of his Scientology
Sure.
connections, because there are connections between Jeffrey Epstein and Maxwell and Scientology, I like to do genealogy if it's not already out there, and I still don't necessarily trust it if it's out there because a lot of times this stuff can be misrepresented. And so I started digging and I'm like, there's a lot of different narratives about who she was raised by, when her parents got divorced, how many
Same thing as Erica Clark that she talks about, the exact same. Wow,
correct.
really? Go into that, please, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Let me excuse me, absolutely. So, and it's ironic. I don't watch her, but I watch clips and the irony is palpable. It's very frustrating for me. So, what you will find generally, and I've shown people, do I think that Wikipedia is, or like the end all be all? No, but it's a general baseline where you can kind of check the pulse of what information is out there. So, when you look, what you will find is that she says, her parents got divorced when she was really young. She was raised by her grandparents. Her grandfather was a sharecropper on a tobacco farm in North Carolina. And, he ended up being able to buy back that property through, hard work and all of that. That's essentially what you'll find. Um, she really, really does not like to talk about her parents. And I thought, that's kind of interesting. So I started digging through the way back to see because everybody knows about her time with Social Autopsy, right? That website that she ran, which many people have equated it to like a doxing sort of website. I don't really care about that stuff. I think that she was, excuse my language, being like a shit lib, right? But most people know about that. And so I was like, okay, I'm not really interested in that. Let me see what was being reported when she stepped on the scene and as this edgy conservative, sort of influencer, because she did come out of nowhere into the conservative scene. If you actually track this, she's just promulgated into the spotlight out of nowhere. And what you found was you would have grandpa chiming in every once in a while in the early days, but you would also have her father chiming in and also her sisters. And what you'll notice is dad and grandpa have the exact same name. So the name game is very easy to obfuscate if you're familiar with doing any type of genealogy, especially a common name like Robert Lee Owens. It's very, very easy to hide that name. And so what I did is I took all of the information data regarding her sisters, grandpa, and dad. Then I went back, went through or not her Instagram, her Twitter, and she had made a really old post, and it was sharing a photo of her grandfather. And her grandfather, she was commenting how she was raised not to take any grief from anybody because the KKK would show up on his yard, and his dad never backed down and he was never a victim because that's always her thing. She's not going to be beaten down, by black progressives or white progressives, whatever. And so I knew who grandpa was because of the photo that she had shared. That confirmed it for me. And so I went looking, and it took me, and the only reason why I counted and the only reason why it's burned into my brain is because I thought I was going insane. It took me,
Mhm.
I think, like roughly 36 hours, 30 hours to figure it out. But grandpa's story is true from everything that I can find. He was a sharecropper on a tobacco farm in North Carolina. He did open up a few cleaning businesses in Connecticut. And then he did come back and he did retire into North Carolina, and his wife passed away before he did. An interesting omission that Candace does, and I don't know why it is, and I don't know that I'll ever be able to prove it, is grandpa didn't stay and die in North Carolina. Interestingly enough, he goes to Arizona. Obviously, we know where Erica Franz v. Kirk, whatever you would like to call
Mhm.
hers, from, right? Now, he died, I want to say it was 22, 21. So, there's a little bit of disparity in the timeline there, but okay, well enough. So I figure out grandparents, um, their grandparents, their great grandparents. I'm tracking everybody. I mean, I've done her family tree on her dad's side, it's quite extensive. Um, but in doing that, then I whittled it down to her father. And when you look into her father, this is from his own resume that has been completely scrubbed now from the internet. But I do have copies of it and I do have it archived. Her dad was the supervisor of the contracts, not security, the supervisor of the contracts for, can I say the word?
At this point, I'm going to take it down. Of course, that's not the magic word here is COVID, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Supervisor of the contracts for Sandy Hook.
Yeah.
So this is according to his own resume. The reason why I think that this is particularly damning is because, and when you had reached out to me to talk about this, I was like, oh, that's funny because I actually included a blog article that was written by you about the topic on my Patreon show where I did
Good.
like 3.5 hours on it because I thought that you had a very fair and unbiased perspective where it's like, we're not emotionless, cold-hearted assholes for asking
Yeah,
questions, and we're
just
not
asking
saying that
questions. Yeah.
everything was a fabrication out of whole cloth, but there are some valid questions here, and one of the biggest sticking points, and I had pointed it out from your blog, was that her father was in charge of the contracts, and the contracts are one of the main things that are in question in regards to who was handling what that day.
What do you mean by contracts? What kind of contracts?
Janitorial,
Oh, okay.
security,
So that could go into
environmental.
that goes into the cleanup thing that Wolfgang Halbig tried to find in the neighborhood.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah.
her father was in charge of that, though. So does
Oh,
everybody think that her dad probably knows what happened that day since he
wait,
was in charge of the contracts? I would think so. If we're all being non-emotional and objective about it, I don't think that it's an unfair question to ask. And I also think that it's something that the public would probably like to know. Now, the other odd thing about her father being in charge of this, and granted, there is a timeline disparity here, but stay with me. So, everybody knows that Candace, well, most people know who are familiar with her. So she had her, shit lib era, but there was a lawsuit that her and her father had filed against the Stanford Board of Education, right? And this was in regards to what she claims was a racial sort of harassment campaign, right? And I think the
really?
NAACP got involved. Yeah, it,
How
and
long
I've
ago was
heard,
this? This had to be before she was a conservative, right?
oh yeah, no, this, she was still
Mhm.
in high school. I think it was her last year,
Oh,
her senior year of high school.
interesting. Yeah.
So that lawsuit, because originally, there's no information about her parents. She makes it seem like her parents just dropped her and her sisters off at her grandparents' house, and she talks about growing up in the hood of Stanford, like there's, some sort of ghetto there. There's not.
Mhm.
Um, However, when you look into it, I had assumed initially, and finding those court records, that maybe it was her grandfather that had filed it on her behalf, but it wasn't. It listed Robert Lee Owens, the father, and her being a minor at the time. I also ended up finding photos where you can see dad because I now know what dad looks like through finding his social media. The lawyer that they obtained to handle that suit, because I think they got, I want to say it was, I'm going to just round it up just a little bit to an even number. I think it was about $36,000 was what they got for that. Is an individual by the name of Norman Pattis. Some people may know who Norman Pattis is. He represented a couple of the January Sixers, the Manhattan Madam, the Soccer Mom Madam. Trying, there's some other interesting folks that he's
Mhm.
represented, but he also represented Alex Jones and Alex Jones' Sandy Hook defamation
Oh,
lawsuit.
we did a bang on job there. That's for sure.
Yeah. So she has two connections. There's two connections that we have here to Sandy Hook. And again, these are timeline disparities, and this is through her father, but they're still there. And one of the issues I should say that I have with this is that she had Alex Jones on probably about a year and a half ago now, and, Alex Jones did what he does, which is, excuse my language, shit coding, right? And, talking about how, Adam Lanza was, a CIA, he was gonna be working for the CIA, and it's like, "No, that's not what the record says, Alex, you know that." And, Candace is sitting there looking dumbfounded, but she's, like, nodding, and she almost has this duper's delight on her face. Obviously, this is just my opinion, but she's just like, "Oh, like I'm from Connecticut. I've never heard of that. Like that's really
Hmm.
crazy." And so
Oh,
it's, and also when you look into it, because again, she makes it seem as though her parents were out of her life when she was very young. Well, we know the dad was around during the lawsuit. I've found the marriage records. I've also found the divorce records because guess what? She lied about when her parents got divorced too. And I've also found like their voter registration records throughout the years. As far as everything that I can find, and I'm not pretending to know interpersonal family dynamics with Candace Owens, and I don't care. However, they were all living, if not at the exact same address, in the same town. Stanford ain't that big. However, her parents did not get divorced until she was almost 30. She tells people that she was under 10 years old. Sometimes it goes up to 11, and that she lived this horrible life with all of these struggles. When she came onto the scene, her whole thing, and a lot of this stuff is still on the way back last time I checked, she's going to write a book because people would never believe the things that she's gone through, that she's survived. And it's like, you seem to have a pretty cush life. Is you're the one that, according to her, she, didn't meet some requirement and she had to drop out of, I think it was the University of Rhode Island. According to them, she didn't pay or didn't take a class that was required. Nobody can really get their story straight on that. And again, I don't really care about her time, with the social autopsy thing. I think it was just her trying to be controversial, but she has said numerous times that she wants to be famous. She wants to be known all around the world. And I think that she's willing to do anything that she can to get there, including misrepresenting her past, despite her feeling entitled to cherry pick other people's past and
Yes.
make some really bold claims and some really big stretches that again
Mm.
it's a real stretch for me. um with one of the biggest platforms, I would say on the internet, I think that most people know who she is at a bare minimum. But when you start asking about her, it's like that shows that she doesn't really hold those values. She doesn't hold the values that she espouses because it's what's good for me, not for thee,
Yeah.
right? And so when you try to challenge these things, either people say that like you're being a Zionist, like, oh, did you get your shekels deposited? And it's like, no, 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 no. I'm not playing your politic game, okay? I don't care about any of that. It's the fact that she's lied about where she came from, about her past. She feels very entitled to sit there and nitpick and pick apart. And I believe that when you're in the public eye, you are, you're open to criticism and scrutiny, and that's fine. But what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And, I've
Yeah.
watched Baron Coleman, who I think is, excuse my language, a total jackass. He also was the lawyer for Ali Alexander during January 6th.
Oh, I didn't
So,
know.
again,
She pushes him all the time, where she's always
correct.
showing his clips and everything, yeah.
Correct. So that's another January 6th sort of like weird adjacent thing
Hmm,
because I think
interesting.
that there's something odd there with George and Parlor. But I've watched Baron Coleman and Ian Carroll, which I mean, for anybody that takes him seriously, I can't really help you. But I've seen them take these massive super chats where people are telling me, like, hey, go look. And people are saying, hey, there's this chick, she found that Candace's dad was in charge of. Now most people are running around, and I think they're shit coding my work, repeating it as her dad was in charge of security. No, he was not in charge of security. He oversaw all of the contracts for a company called Bright Horizons Family Solutions, and I'll come back to that in a second. But I've watched these two take hundreds of dollars, and this is just in one stream where people are asking these questions, and they're like, oh yeah, we'll ask her. And like, oh, like that Ian Carroll was like, oh, that's crazy. If that was true, I feel like that would go viral and you wouldn't even need proof. And it's like, no, like Candace has struck my channel, so technically,
Well,
like if two
well,
more
talk
did.
about that. How did she do that? Because I mean, I mean, it's just she can't literally do it. She just got YouTube to do it. Or what happened there?
Well, a strike on the channel. So
Right.
when somebody files a claim, whatever it's for, I obviously you're on here, right? You get in a lot of
Yeah.
trouble for
Yep.
censorship, and it's
Yep.
happened to me with other stuff. But with her, I took a very small clip where she had talked about the pull to go to Europe, to the UK, and that John and Irina were the lone donors. I had put that because I like to make little musical clips, and I faded in the image of the Black Book, right? Where it shows John Mappin is in the Black Book. And I can't remember what other little funny stuff that I kind of had put into it, but in the timestamp, and I have screenshots of all of this in the email, they timed the Black Book coming into full view on the screen showing John Mappin was in Epstein's Black Book, that I was harassing Candace with
Mm.
that information that's on the DOJ website and has been public for years. For years. So again, what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Absolutely.
She wants to sit here and criticize everybody's connections to everybody. But when you start looking into hers, it's either she's being attacked, she thinks that everybody's attacking her. No, you're not being throttled by the algorithm. That's your number one tell, that she gets
Yes.
millions of views, is that it's not
Yes.
organic and she's allowed to say what she's allowed to say. And again,
Right.
I don't believe that she truly holds the values that she espouses, because when it wasn't working out with the social autopsy sort of like shit lib thing, and according to George Webb, Mr. Not Mossad, not CIA or NSA.
Mm.
According to George Webb, she was working for the Clinton Foundation at that time. I don't know if that's true or not. That's just what he said. But then she goes into conservatism. And again, when you look at it, it's immediate. It's absolutely immediate. And so I thought, well, this is so odd. I thought it was ironic. What, we're in 2026 now? So it was 2018, and it was a very long article, kind of, her backstory, this, young firebrand conservative Candace Owens coming onto the scene. And they had interviewed Alex Jones at the end. I think it's ironic because he said, she's going to be the next Megyn Kelly someday. And I thought, oh, Alex, if you only knew
Mhm.
this many years later how that all had panned out. Um, Crap, I totally just lost my train of thought. I'm sorry, with the dogs barking in the
Oh, well,
background.
no, I want, it's good to see Jody Taylor. Jody Taylor's the one that recommended your channel to me. And like I said, I didn't associate that with you. I said, "Oh, we're running Jules, okay." And then she said, "It's Dana." I said, "Oh, okay, I remember you now." But so Jody, I hope you're, because I don't think Jody's too happy with me lately because I've turned pretty much full bore against Trump. So I'm still a libertarian. I've been a fan of Candace Owens, of her journalism, like, with Erica Kirk and the Macrons, whatever it is over there, and Twisted Pistol rightly points out she's going further than I think David Duke did 20 years ago. She is really full bore saying anything she wants about the Jews and the tribe and everything, and yeah, it's amazing. And of course, we all wonder why is she being allowed to do that. And because this came out of nowhere and that wasn't part of her story. I mean, is there anything in her background that indicates that she was a huge critic of Zionism or anything? Not to my knowledge.
No, not at all. I mean, again, I think that ultimately at the end of the day, she doesn't really believe in anything. I don't think that she holds these views truly deep down because, again, she was in, whether you want to call it leftist, democratic, I don't care. I don't do identity politics. I don't vote. Okay. So I don't think that she really held those views. I think that you're young. We're all dumb before our frontal lobes are fully developed in your mid 20s. Okay. So, like, you're young and dumb, and, she sees an opportunity and she takes it, right? Like, I'm not saying she's not smart, but when that didn't work out, she goes into conservatism. And now I remember what I was thinking of. Now, with her movement into conservatism at that time, because again, the dad is such a big sticking point, most people don't know that her father walked her down the aisle at her wedding. Her sisters were a part of her wedding party. Now, her mother was not present, but dad was.
Hmm.
As far as dad goes, when I found his social media, and he's, typical boomer dad, seems like he's very proud of his daughters. And again, it's like, why are you critiquing everybody when you've essentially told the world, in my opinion, through you trying to like hide this or separate yourself and make it seem like your dad abandoned you guys, like that your dad doesn't care about you. But when you look through his stuff, he moved to Arizona in 2007, 2008. Well, no, 2008. I think it was 2008, maybe 2009, because he was still there during the lawsuit. But it was after the lawsuit that he moved to Arizona. Now, when you look through his social media, and then you can look at other people's accounts that are tagged in these posts because there was Blexit, right? So, the Blexit chapter in Arizona, there's photos of her father hanging out with Officer Tatum, that guy who does her merch. So, like, they
Who's extremely pro-Israel, seems to that's anything she says, by the way.
that's what I'm saying. I don't think that these people actually hold these deep-seated beliefs as much as they like to espouse. I think that it's money that they see dollar signs, but it's her dad is connected within these circles, and I do think that there is a valid question. And again, I don't know that I would ever be able to prove it, and do I think she would ever be honest? No. But because her father went to Arizona and her aunt is in Arizona, her aunt's a realtor out there. Did the Owens family have a connection with the France V's before Charlie Kirk even came into the picture?
Wow, wouldn't that be something?
I
That would
think
be
it would be, and I think it's a valid question.
Well, you're one of the points you're raising about her childhood when her parents got divorced, was her father in life. That's one of the exact things she's raised about Erica. That Erica said she was raised by a single mother, when in fact there was always a stepfather in the house and her father was around. So, I mean, is that projection? I mean, it's amazing that she seems to be in the same situation in her own life.
Yeah, I believe that it is. I mean, I've found, I mean, I spent way too much time on all of this, but I was trying to be accurate. I didn't wanna misrepresent the facts or
Right.
inaccurately appropriate things or, condemn some random person because, like, it's everybody has a past. And, like, am I trying to air out her family's dirty laundry? No. Like, has her dad been arrested? Yeah. But is it relevant? No, it's not white collar crime and it's not violent. So, like, I don't really think that it's relevant to that, even though I'm sure that if the shoe was on the other foot with Erica, she would run with that for, a good month. Um, but, I mean, as far as the projection, there's photos that her dad has shared, and again, I'm not pretending to know if her parents just got divorced on paper later on. However, it's very clear that her father was in her life, that the sisters were very close, and yes, but I mean, I've seen photos of them all together, at varying young ages where they're very clearly possibly middle school, but definitely high school at a bare minimum when you compare it to the photos during the time of the, lawsuit against the Stanford Board of Education. So, I mean, I do think that it's projection, and I think it's also I don't know. I mean, I'm a really, like, small person. People don't really know who I am. So, like, does she think that that's gonna get traction? Like, no, I don't think that she does. She thinks that she's above, critique, in my opinion. I don't think that she
Yeah.
would be able to handle being, factually critiqued on all of these things because I'm not saying this is allegedly her father. I'm saying that this is her father.
Right. Well, you want to make it clear, like whenever I talk about Sandy Hook or anything else, is that I don't know, and I've been accused of being a fanboy of Candace Owens because I watch her show all the time. I think she does a really good job, but if she's got the exact same kind of issues in her background that she's criticizing Erica Kirk and Macron and I don't know how many others for, and a lot of people at Turning Point USA, which I think she should. I think she's made some good points. Appears to do good journalism, but you're doing good journalism on her opinions. Nobody's all we're doing is asking questions. It seems like, and people have the right to lie about their childhood if they want. I mean, it's not, I don't think it's a crime, but when you're a public figure and you're making the same points about other people, I think that's obviously at least hypocritical. Twisted Pistols, CNP. Do you know what CNP is? That's that group John Brissom talks about. It's like the conservative CFR.
The
He
Nash
says there's
Council for National Policy, I think.
yeah, that's John Brissom, who's I don't know if he's watching the show. He's always talking about that. He said Brissom exposed Candace years ago as being with the CNP. Has Twisted Pistols come across that? Do you have any information that she's connected to CNP?
No, again, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. I think that the CMP, and again, I would also defer people to Brisson, just because he's done excellent work on it and everything checks out. And I tried to defer people to others that are smarter than me. I haven't looked into that because it wasn't really my focus. I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, let me try and flesh this out as far as I can. And I'm not gonna say that her work is unoriginal. I I do think that, and whether I'll be able to prove it or not, and people can say that this is me being braggadocious, it's just an observation from my perspective. So um oh, I'm totally spacing on his name. The pastor of Thousand Oaks Church that was running Turning Point Faith. It was really good
Oh,
friends
is
with
that
Charlie.
McCoy?
Yes, McCoy.
Yeah.
So, like, I was as far as, like, when I went and looked, I was the first person that found that his grandfather was involved in, psychological warfare for the Navy. She didn't bring that out until a month later. I know that I was the original person that
Rob
had brought
McCoy, yeah.
up yeah, Rob McCoy, thank you. And I had
Thank
to
you,
look up
Steph.
his name because I can't remember it, but, I was the first person, and she didn't bring this up until months later, and she did it the day after Baron Coleman did it. Again, when you watch these patterns, it seems like this stuff is not organic. I had found back in November that Colonel Paul E. Vallely, the co-author of Mind War with Michael Aquino, that was my discovery. I was the person that found that. And again, I'm not asking for a pat on the back. It is what it is. It's just I had pointed out, I'm like, well, that's kind of weird that there's this guy who
Mm.
it's been documented. Many people do think that at a bare minimum, he's a pagan or a cultist, and there's a very good argument that he's a very high-ranking Satanist as well, just like his peer Michael Aquino. Why would nobody point that out? That's very easy to
Yeah, and
find.
and how did Michael Aquino? How does it? What was he, a colonel or something? He was in was it the Air Force for all those, or was Army all those years, and an open Satanist. When I wrote about the McMartin preschool scandal, he was kind of tied to that. He had these terrible allegations involving children against him. How does somebody like that become a high-ranking official in our military?
Well, according to
Mhm.
according to Vallely, if you ask him, he was the person that was sent in to investigate Michael Aquino when they found out about his satanic or Setian ties, which dates their relationship back much further than what people are willing to admit, which I think is really fascinating. Um, but I mean that so I went and looked in the archive to see if anybody had even just saved, like, a screenshot of the old Turning Point board, because obviously once Charlie had passed, there was a lot of moving around of people, right? And so you're trying to grab stuff as fast as you can, and I found as far back, the furthest that I could find, it was 2018, the same time that Candace showed up, that, Colonel Vallely was brought onto the supervisory council board, whatever they call it, committee. And he's still on there. The last I checked, probably 2 or 3 months ago, to this day. So it's those seem like low blows that she could take at Turning Point. There's obvious money laundering. I've highlighted that when I discussed this the last time on my channel. There's very clear, just blatant money laundering going on with Turning Point and their,
Yeah,
various arms. These are things that people can objectively criticize, and I think that they should. I think that they have way too much power and influence, especially considering the state of things now. Charlie was credited as being, the right's new kingmaker. I think he was on path to be president. I think that there were a lot of people that wanted him dead, quite frankly. I don't think that it was just, one group or one individual. And things are not mutually exclusive. I wish that people would stop having blinders on when we look at these things and realize that there's a lot of people to profit off of it. Do I think that there's a lot of legitimate criticism to come at Erica? Well, yeah, as an ICU nurse initially, I've seen people grieve in really crazy ways, right? Like some people have what many would deem inappropriate reactions to death. But once you see it so many times, you're like, okay,
yeah,
people just do what they do. But then started to get a
yeah.
little weird pretty quick. And
Yeah,
I
when
think
when you
that
do a memorial service with fireworks going on and your video recorded gushing like 15 days about how big it was, and it was the event of the century and how much merchandise you sold. I don't know. That's really difficult.
I mean, even initially, I wanna say, like, I gave it, like, a month and a half, I'm like, "Look, they're so young." Like, to me, Charlie was a baby, she's a baby, like, I'm like, "Your husband is murdered," essentially on the world stage because I mean we all hold the black mirror in our hands however you're watching it, everybody saw it. And ultimately at the end of the day, he was a young man and he was a father, and I think that that's the most tragic thing. And so I really tried to extend a lot of grace and not be hyper judgmental, and plus I feel like everybody else was kind of running and doing that from the get-go. I think that there's a lot of fair criticism to be levied in that direction, but also I think that Candace has taken everybody on a ride, and that's just my opinion. You don't really see any of these things actually coming to fruition, and don't get me wrong. In regards to the Macron thing, in my opinion, dude looks like a lady. There's a conversation to be had, right? And I think that the information regarding the age disparity between the Macrons and, what many of us would objectively call grooming, it's like even if the Macrons do win, they're not going to come out sterling like they think that they are, right? And so it's looking at it from both sides. However, a lot of that information was exposed through French journalists in France prior to Candace ever bringing it out here. So I
Mhm.
don't think that a lot of her information is in original, that it's not necessarily boots on the ground physically, but that she's actually doing the work. Now, I don't have the journalist's name, but I've had multiple people tell me this, that they're like, these are the French journalists that have gotten in a lot of trouble over there, legally speaking. But then Candace does it, and she runs with the credit for it.
Mhm.
Um, and again, a broken clock can be right twice a day, right? Do I think that she's made some valid criticisms, and would levying some of those valid criticisms be a proper use of her platform? Yeah, but she's also just run in circles about a lot of things. We had like the Mormon beekeepers, the maroon
Mhm.
shirts,
Mhm. Yeah.
the French, assassin squad, whatever, and it's like these things never really follow through. She had the stuff with
The
Mitch.
Egyptian airplanes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and again, it's like, okay, these things you can, but it's not, she almost paints it as like this Easter egg, right? Where it's like, oh, like next time, like I'm gonna reveal everything next
Mhm.
time, right? And it never really goes anywhere. And the stuff with Mitch Snow, it's crazy to see now that like a lot of people have just accepted that that guy was a con artist and that he was a grifter. He's, doing the podcast circuit himself, and he can't really keep his story straight. And I think it's really weird that like there's allegations that Joe Kent sort of like brokered that conversation between
Mhm.
Mitch Snow and Candace. I think George Webb getting involved is also very, very, very suspicious. And I think that it's also doubly suspicious because George Webb and John Mappin are cousins, if you would believe that. So her
Mhm.
handlers, I would say, because I do believe that they are her handlers. I think that John Mappin is her handler, and I also think that George Webb is, to an extent, her handlers are cousins. They're distant cousins, but they're cousins. It's the Mappin Webb jewelry dynasty out of Wales.
Well, I think, and there's people who remind me all the time, they think that I've got so many people who think everybody's a shill but me. And, they tell me, well, I'm not big enough. And I say, so I guess if you get any kind of success at all, then it's hard to escape, the fact that because you look into the connections of these people. Listen, what you're telling me about Candace Owens' background, just the lying part of it, I mean, that's suspicious. And, the connection maybe to her father, that's what Wolfgang Haber couldn't for a long time. He kept trying to find out who the company was, and he just wanted to see who did the cleanup. I
Yeah.
want to know about this because he used to be a school principal, so he was used to that kind of stuff. And he couldn't. It didn't happen. He said he was, being wasn't being responsible or irresponsible or for asking that. So that's very strange. And when you're a journalist like that, and she does do real journalism, I think when the spotlight is turned on you, then because none of us, I mean, all of us have something, maybe. As I've pointed out many times, people. My address growing up, from the time I was a little kid till I was 19 years old, was 3333. I had nothing to do with it. I was 2 years old when I moved there. I don't know why it was, but I have no connection to Masons, I can guarantee you that. So, sometimes, we look too hard at that, but what I like to do, for the second half of the show, usually, I like to open up and let anybody that wants to come into the chat, either video or audio, ask questions of you or, comments or anything, and I'm sure there are people that want that. But before that, I've kinda taken up all your time in the first hour on Candace Owens. I don't You might have had something else you wanted to talk about. I'm sure it's not your number one thing. Is there anything else that you're working on that you, would like to talk about?
Well, I will say, I didn't want to do the Candace thing, but I'm kind of like a bloodhound. If I'm on the track of something, I've got to see it through. And so, I've walked away from the topic. That's not my thing. I just put it out there, and it took a long time to lay out the information. I couldn't just be like, "Oh, her dad was in charge of, the contracts for Sandy Hook," and walk away, right? I think that that would tarnish what credibility people perceive that, I may or may not have, depending on who you ask. Um, it's the company, and I won't harp on this for too long, that way you can open up questions, but the company was called Bright Horizons Family Solutions. So when you actually look into them, uh, they paint it as they are sort of a contractor for daycares and schools, but when you really dig in, especially in the old Eric journals, this is like even back in like the 90s, early 2000s, they run the daycare centers for like the UN, Johnson and Johnson, no, not Raytheon, Lockheed Martin. So this is not an easy job to acquire. And I think that her dad being in the know, because I think objectively speaking, and until proven otherwise, but again, I'm using his own words, he knows more about what happened that day than anybody else, period, besides the other unnamed parties that we don't know that were involved. But this was on his own resume. And it's very frustrating to me that people see her as some kind of truther. When again, in reality, there's massive holes in her backstory. If I had a platform as big as her, I could sit there and do exactly what she's done to Erica,
Yeah.
except my stuff would be a lot more factual and I wouldn't be making all of these crazy stretches, because I think she makes a lot of crazy stretches about things, and brings in things that are not relevant. So what I tell people is just, protect your minds, right? And if the algorithm is showing it to you, it's because that's what they want you to look at. And I think that if these people who claim to be his friends actually cared, they would be focusing more on what's been going on in court. And if they do believe that Mr. Robinson is indeed innocent or that he's being railroaded, I'm not claiming knowledge one way or the other, then they would be using their platform to bring more attention to that, but they are not. It's just constantly been red herrings of look over here, and then they jump over to the next topic. And I think that that is doing a disservice, because I think that there are a lot of valid questions about what happened to Charlie.
No, absolutely, and I just wrote something, hopefully be in Jim Fetzer's, he's a friend of mine, I don't know if you know of him, but, I think he's putting out a collection of, something is things about Charlie Kirk, so I don't know if he'll include it, but, and I've written a lot of my Substack about it too, and I try to laugh at it, I try to use humor with it, but there are tons of questions. Tyler Robinson, I think, is as innocent as Lee Harvey Oswald. I don't think he shot anybody, but, so the story is ridiculous, and Candace nibbles around that, talks about it some, but then you're right, since she goes into what Erica's behavior is bizarre, it's ridiculous, but, so I know she's trying to connect it there. Yeah, she should have a show where she's concentrating more on ballistics and how impossible the angle was, and the story of disassembling the rifle 3 or 4 times or whatever, and his transgender lover that's disappeared down the memory hole that was supposed to be cooperating with the authorities, and, his parents turning him in that, Candace says she has I don't know. She has a source with him that the parents didn't turn him in, and they think he's innocent. I don't know, I guess we'll find that out at trial. I don't know, but, lots of, stories there, but that's what happens in all these cases, so I'm going to, put the link here. Okay, put it in the chat, guys. Anybody that wants to jump in, and, I like to see you all, so if you come on video, but a lot of you don't, so you wanna come on video and show us your faces, that's cool. Otherwise, you can come on audio as well if you have questions for Dana Duda Rotting Jules.
Well, and also I think too, it wouldn't just be in, everybody says that they would do things differently if they were running it, right? But in my opinion, watching someone that you claim was your dear friend, I think that's kind of up for debate, but
Oh, yeah, yeah,
I think that that I can only imagine how tragic that was. I mean, it was tragic and traumatizing watching it happen, and I
yeah,
wasn't, like,
yeah,
particularly a fan of the guy because I don't care about politics. I think it's
right.
fake and gay, and also I've been saying fake and gay for much longer than Candace. I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
she's kinda I'm one of the guys he's not that's here today, White Wolf, he's the first one that kept saying that, "Everything's fake and gay," but yeah, you're right, Candace Owens has appropriated, culturally appropriated that term.
She definitely has, but, like, for me, it's if I watched that happen and it was everywhere and I saw people were making a show of it and I really thought, like, hey, they're lying about what happened to my friend, and I have this platform and I can use it. I'm sorry. I would be encouraging having very peaceful protest outside of the courthouse. I don't understand why you would not bring attention. You can only sit there and go so far with having experts on varying topics come on and talk about all of the questions, but there is something to be said about a physical presence where, you're calm and you're respectful, but, you can hold signs, like Robinson didn't do it, whatever. I don't think that everything you can blame everything on the Mossad. I think that that's a stupid take. But, you would have people go out there and protest. I would like to think so. I would hope that, if it was me and the shoe was on the other foot, that my friends would do that because again, that's going to cause problems locally, especially for the people in power at the local level. They're going to be like, well, all right, we're going to have to start addressing this. We've got all these protesters outside of this courthouse, right? And that's also going to get some media attention that has the potential to get into what people consider the mainstream media. But I think that Candace is mainstream media because according to Forbes, their assessment from last year, I think she makes roughly between 15 and 50,000 per ad read.
Mhm.
On top of all of her super chats, which I've tracked as up to like $25,000 per episode sometimes. YouTube takes 30% off the top. So I think that that's a really easy way to launder money. But they said that she's on track to be the top paid podcaster in the world.
Wow.
So, I mean, she is mainstream. She's making more than the people at Fox and CNN.
Oh, yeah, that's the way they ought to be. I don't know if you see that question from Ellen Corley on the screen. She wants to know what you know about George Webb in general and relative to her theory that he is Candace's handler.
Oh, I'm not trying to be evasive. I for safety reasons, if you know anything about Mr. Webb, I and there's people are litigation happy and I value my life and I don't want to end up with a toe tag, particularly because I'm a female. This
Yeah.
information's pretty easy to find. They have tried to memory hole a lot of this stuff. And a lot of this stuff, I mean, specifically with him, goes back to Mr. James Alefantis. So, but
Mm.
I'm not willing to talk about that
Yeah,
publicly.
you gotta be careful about that guy. You got Alex Jones to apologize. So,
That's he's someone that I'm not trying to be evasive. It is literally a safety issue. I think that, in my opinion, that individual is extremely dangerous. And that's why I say not Mossad, not NSA.
so there's Ellen Corley. Good to see you, Ellen. She's full of questions. How you doing?
Fine, thank you. This is very interesting. Yes, I was. Yeah, the questions I put in the chat were what I'm interested in. What you said. George Webb, the connection between George Webb and Candace Owens, and because I've what it's interesting. There's something funny about him. I have a friend who really follows him, and but it's also strange that to me that like Tucker Carlson and Ian Carroll, and they all kind of came about at the same time. So are they kind of CIA or what's the connection there?
So I will say that I say not Mossad, not NSA, because that's there's some stuff out there that's been memory hold in regards to Mr. Webb. So I'm not saying definitively. And again, it's my opinion as a female, not safe person to discuss. However, I agree that, these now Tucker, I mean, Tucker was, on Fox and like Tucker's dad was
Tucker's been
involved in
around for a long time. Yeah.
yeah, and his dad was involved in Iran Contra. So it's like I think that Tucker's always, kind of been a spook and it's the story of like, oh, I was rejected by the CIA. Yeah, the lawyer I was talking about, Norman Pattis, he claimed that he was rejected by the CIA. So it's like whatever. I don't really buy that stuff.
But Tucker has really transformed his image because this guy used to belittle 9/11 conspiracy theorists, and he
Oh
used
yeah.
to and the last couple of years, especially, and now this, and we talk about this on the show all the time because I'm very critical of Israel, very critical of Zionism, But this stuff is being allowed, and Tucker Carlson never showed any signs of that at all. And now he's saying, he's questioning, does Israel have a right to exist, which is one of the mantras. Does Israel have a right to exist? With saying, what do you mean by that? Nobody's ever done that. Not David Duke, anybody. And it's a great question. But why, what made this transformation? And Ian Carroll, I think, is different, though. You may know more, but Ian Carroll did come out of nowhere. And I was instantly suspicious because I know how hard it is to grow an audience. It's not easy.
Even going like viral, because that was his thing, right? Like he had went viral. So I think I'll come back to Tucker. So like with Ian, as far as I understand, because I didn't follow him, because as soon as he came on the scene, I was like, nah, you came out of nowhere. But his whole thing was like TikTok, where you have like the green screen, so like an image would be behind me, like a screenshot or something like that. And he's essentially just repeating other people's work. He's not, doing anything original. He's reading other people's articles, screenshots of books. And so I'm like, well, that's really weird. Like, why is this guy blowing up? Now, from what I understand, he had some type of, I don't know, something within the crypto sphere, like cryptocurrency. It was some type of website. And so there could be some funny money there. But I do think that he was allowed to go viral, and he's on Joe Rogan out of nowhere, like, and once you go on Joe, it's like that's a sealed that's a sealed deal. It's once you're on Joe, it's like that's it, you're instantly limited hangout, in my opinion. That's like the main barometer to me. But I think with him, it's he's essentially a parrot for some of these individuals. He paints himself as sort of this edgy, maybe conservative or right-leaning, because again, I don't think that these people truly hold some of these beliefs. Now with Tucker, and I shouldn't be more fair with him, but I'm trying to be objective, so he was on Fox, as I remember it. He was pretty young, I mean, I think he has a baby face, but he was pretty young, right?
Bow tie. Yeah, the bow tie.
Yeah, so I think that a sign of a healthy person is being willing to take in new information and change your views, right? I think that that's part of growing as a person. So I think that there could be an element of that. And obviously, being in that type of industry, I think that you see a lot of behind the scenes stuff that might make you jaded. But it's the being allowed, like you guys said, to have such a large platform with such a large voice, and you're blatantly coming out and saying things that other individuals, someone small like you, like me, and Don, you're bigger than me. I highly respect your work. Like it's these individuals would be kiboshed. They would be, blacklisted, like you have done, from all of social media. And so it's not that these individuals are saying anything unique. You need to ask yourself why they're being allowed. Because again, a lot of these people, I'm not saying all of them, and I'm not disparaging all of Candace's work. Again, she's intelligent, she's beautiful. There's something to be said about that combination, right? So but a lot of her stuff is not original. I'm sorry. And a lot of stuff she has not followed up on. And, with Tucker, his dynamic is a bit different. He has a lot of guests on, he does a lot of interviews. And so there's something to be said about a different dynamic as far as the show. But it's these people are being presented to you because that's the opposing perspective, in my opinion, that they want you to have. It's either you're pro-Israel, you're pro-Zionism, you're pro-Trump, or you have, does Israel have the right to exist? Everything is a Mossad honeypot, because again, it's fascinating that Candace wants to point the finger at Erica and make some claims about alleged modeling Epstein connections, when literally the man that introduced her to her husband is in Jeffrey Epstein's black book.
Yeah, that's
Does anybody see the irony there?
It really is. I think if you like Candace wants to, debate the TPUSA people, and we'd love to see that. I would love to have you on with her to have her refute that. But as you said, this is what's good for the goose isn't good for the gander. She's coming at. She may come after this video. Well, it'll be on Rumble, so 5 people will see it or something. YouTube, because otherwise,
my question or concern is the way it's like controlled opposition, limited hangout. There's should be a way that the opposition isn't controlled so that we can get at the truth. And also, I know that Tucker Carlson's father was was Voice of America and
Yes.
Radio Free Europe, and that the U.S. Agency for Global Media, uh, that used to be propaganda, and they weren't allowed to do that in America according to the FCC fairness doctrine. What they were doing to try to, I think, what we have now are influencers are kind of manufactured the way I guess they
Yes.
were before, but it's really concerning that we're not getting just the whole truth.
I no, I completely agree, and I think that your concern is valid, and it's a concern that I wish more people would, kind of bring to the forefront. It's again, a broken clock is right twice a day, right? I'm not saying that these people are not talented or that they're not intelligent and that they don't make accurate observations. And
Mhm.
I am staunchly anti-Zionist. I think the things that have occurred in the past week or so, I've decided that I'm not going to just limit it to my Patreon because that's where I usually save my hot takes. I'm just kind of over it. But again, it's why do these individuals who have these massively large platforms, and some of the values that they may or may not hold or claim, that they espouse, that seems to conflict with some of these events and individuals that they engage with. And you know,
Mhm.
it's very hard because, Don, you had brought up shilling earlier, and it's like I try to point out to people, this is not me being jealous of Candace or being jealous of anybody. We all want to be successful and we should all want that for each other, right? It's
Right.
very hard in this sphere. And I'm certainly not a
Mhm.
feminist, but I mean, yeah, there's
Mhm.
not a lot of chicks that do like, I mean,
Mhm.
my area of research is very niche, admittedly, but
Mhm.
it's hard. And so, you don't want to sit there and point out that like, oh,
Mhm.
like everybody's bots in their chats or that they're being a shill, but it's like,
Yeah.
at what point do you question that you
Mhm.
are being given the mainstream narrative, but you're given the illusion of choice because you're on YouTube, right? Because, we have to consider the propaganda and media
Mhm.
landscape. I have a
Mhm.
deep, deep sympathy. This is something I talk about a lot, and I really try to kind of beat into some of my audience's heads because as an ICU nurse, I dealt with a lot of Vietnam veterans. And so I have a deep affection for a lot of the boomer generation. I don't think that it should be a denigrating term. I think that it's just a term. Like I'm a millennial. I hate that, but technically I am. But I in talking to, those men, I learned a lot. And I just they're always gonna have a soft spot in my heart. And so in learning through them the power of propaganda and being reminded that Cold War propaganda was beaten into, the prior generation's head and is still beaten into our head today, right? To an extent, it's just in different ways. But that the propaganda and media landscape has changed, and people are saying, that YouTube is the new media, right? The internet is the new media. It's did
Mhm.
Alex Jones really get sued for, what was it, like $1 million, $1 billion, something
Billion. It
stupid?
was almost $1 billion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, he
Okay.
didn't, because what happened? He did his
Mhm.
whole thing where he was on camera and he was crying about how the IRS and the Democrats are gonna shut me
Mhm.
down. They're
Mhm.
outside, blah, 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 blah. And then what happened? He got a tanning bed and he went on Ozempic, and now he's on X and he's making just as much money, if not more, right? Again,
Yeah.
these things are manufactured. So
Yeah.
to
Mhm.
me, it's if you want to like her, that's okay. That's fine. People are allowed to enjoy things, but you have to keep your psyche in check and your emotions in check and ask, why are they
Mhm.
allowed to say all of this and ultimately at the end of the day make all of this money off of this, right?
Exactly. Jen Henson has and good to see you, Jen. Good to see you here. She has a question. But it's exactly kind of what we're saying. How can be wondering how genuine influencer and what is an influencer? We're influencers. We just don't influence as many, I guess. Can be both genuine and do well. If we call everyone who does control well controlled, is the only authentic thing to be can be done to show authenticity, to take a vow of poverty. And that's I've said that before where people have told me, well, they would have knocked you off if you were. I said, so the only way you can be true is to be killed? I mean, that's business. That's a hell of a note, but that's the way some people think. And I look at people like you, Dana, and Stephanie Sledge is another one I've had on my show several times. I think I'm the only one promoting her. She's a great journalist, but she doesn't. Nobody knows who she is. She's on shows like mine, and she does did so much great work on the Gabby Giffords, whatever happened there. And Sandy Hook too, but she's done great work on that. And so I like to highlight that, but no, nobody knows what about her. She's an influencer to people like me. But so Jen, I think that's the problem is I don't we're kind of doing that here. We're saying how could I mean, you mentioned Dana, something I said is that it's possible for people to have a change of heart. So, and Tucker Carlson, Candace is pretty good too, but Tucker Carlson is a damn good actor if that's what he is. He really can put that sincerity out there. He's Jimmy Stewart, man. He seems so sincere, and and so if he isn't, he's a much better actor than most of them are. But I think it's possible that someone could be in that system and I think that's what happened to Pat Buchanan. If you remember Pat Buchanan was a typical Republican guy and Nixon guy, Nixon loyalist for some reason. But when he ran for president, he started questioning free trade. And he went up in New Hampshire and he saw the effect that these trade policies had on all these working class people. And it made him a populist. He was also a critic of Israel back when the right, criticized Israel. So I think it was legitimate.
Well, the issue is criticizing Israel, isn't it? That's the thread that goes through all this. I think
now it's become chic to do it, but for a long time it wasn't. But again, it's on, and it's flipped because again, I can remember with Pat Buchanan people, it was only the right that criticized Israel. The left was still whistling the theme song from Exodus, the Paul Newman movie. They were just in love with Israel. But somewhere along the line, the left flipped, and they're all critical of Israel, and hardly anybody on the right is. So I don't know how that happened.
We can't stop this war, is what gets me. If we could stop killing people, that would be that would show we have a fair and accurate media, right? If public opinion was expressed, seems right. It seems like no matter what, we're in this forever war, right? And
we absolutely are. Jen, so you were on ST Patrick's show, Dana?
Yes, I was.
Oh, cool. Yeah, because ST, he was the one that published Masking the Truth because I couldn't get a publisher. He published, and that's the most shadow banned book in the world. Add that to my book. They've definitely played some games with that. Let me tell you, boy. They
which one was that?
Masking the Truth, my COVID book, how COVID-19 destroyed civil liberties and shut down the world. The forward from Sherry Tenpenny didn't help. I mean, it's been ignored by most alt media. We sent copies to Jimmy Dore and everything,
There's a very good point that you're bringing up. So when I was talking about, because I liked Jen's point about, taking a vow of poverty, and I think that when you're starting out, you're trying to, build an audience, so to speak, or at least get a little bit of traction. And I'm very grateful for my subscribers, but I'm a speck of dust. If I got nuked, nobody would know, And so I do agree that the whole self-flagellation of do we have to be poor? It's like, no, we should want success for one another. But when we're talking about disproportionate wealth, because I'm sorry, the money that Candace and Tucker are raking in is disproportionate wealth to most, most people today. There are valid questions to be had. And again, there's no flack for what they're saying that other people are losing their small platforms for, that may be their only source of income, right? And so I think that there is valid criticism, but like with with the Rona, it's people have forgotten. Why isn't there someone like Tucker or Candace that are still talking about that? you know,
Yeah,
because
there's got
because nothing has been resolved. And this is my issue is I'm tired of being gaslit by people. It's like, are we all just going to pretend that that didn't happen? Like it did happen,
The
and it
Rona? What
yeah,
what is that? I'm sorry.
COVID.
no COVID, COVID.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
COVID. Right, right.
you know,
Yes,
it's people
mhm,
just the short-term memory isn't there, and I do blame, you know, the media because I think that they're constantly re-traumatizing us with all of these different things, right?
Could be
It's
coming back bigger than ever. Yeah, it
yeah,
always
one
is.
thing after the other, like you can't really keep
yeah.
track, and I don't think that our natural attention spans nor our psyches are meant to be able to handle this, and people don't realize that, you know, and I'm not trying to use like really psychological language. It's just the best word that I can think of, so forgive me, but like, you know, for those of us that are on Twitter or X, it's like yeah, there's something to be said about watching, you know, a genocide happen for, you know, over a year on the phone that you're holding in your hand in real time while you're seeing all of these people with these massive, you know, platforms, whether they're criticizing or they're pro. And it's like people are just denying objective reality. And I'm not saying that there's not propaganda coming from both sides. I think that that would be very disingenuous of me to say. However, it's
Mhm,
it's become normalized, and I think that that's part of the problem is that it's made people to a
mhm,
certain level kind of apathetic to everything, which I don't fault them because they put this stuff out there and we're allowed to see it. But it's like, you know, we have this active genocide that's going on. And, you know, if people have been paying attention for the past couple days,
mhm,
if you know about the Wannsee conference, I mean, they just held their own version of the Wannsee conference and they were popping bottles of champagne afterwards. And within 3 days,
mhm,
within 72 hours, they're sitting there showing on camera their new state of the art facility to carry out their executions. Now, I had this conversation with my
mhm,
dad the other night. I said, imagine, because my dad is the one that taught me about World War II. I said, imagine if there was, let's even say it was just
mhm,
TV, not cell phones back during World War II. And imagine you see all of these officers, they're obviously, you know, SS officers and the Wehrmacht and all of those groups, and they're coming together to the Wannsee conference and they all go in and they all look very serious, but you can tell it's obviously Nazis. And then they come out, they're popping champagne and all of this. And then they bring a camera crew out to, I'll just say, Auschwitz, I guess, or Dachau. And they have the camera crew and they're going, come look at our state of the art facility. It's going to be very efficient. And this is our estimates of, you know, how many people we're going to be able to exterminate every day. It's like that's what's happening right now on Twitter,
mhm,
on X, in real time. And the fact that
mhm.
people want to sit here and make this like a political thing, it's like, you always wonder for those of us that study history, I feel like many of us have these moments where you wonder what you would do in a in that time that you're studying, you know, where you're
Which facility are you talking about that they're talking? I guess it's a new some a medical facility. Which facility are you talking about now?
so let me I think I have it bookmarked because I can't remember the guy's name. It's the one that it has the hanging apparatuses in it. Like it's a massive building, and you can see there's, like, the glass window, and you
Okay.
see, like, it's all, like, it's very
Is
modern,
it
right?
in
It's
Israel or
No, this is not Israel
I
hanging
know
the
this,
Palestinians,
you
right?
know,
Because I just
Israel.
voted to be able to hang that. Yeah, yeah.
no,
What
I'm
are you
trying to
talking about?
find the I'm trying
Mhm,
to find the post right now because what had prompted me, what had brought it up into my feed, I guess, is I had seen from the New York Times, and again, there's propaganda from both sides. I'm not denying that. However, the New York Times had put out this very interesting article, and it was in regards to, I'm gonna have to pull it up, guys, forgive me. It was in regards to these phone calls, and there's actually a video interview of a woman as well. I'm just going to read what it says. It says, behind the scenes, Israeli officials have conveyed a more targeted message in private calls to
Whoa.
local leaders across southern Lebanon. Israeli military officials have assured several Christian and Druze communities that they could remain in the evacuation zone. They have pressed them, however, to force out any Lebanese from neighboring Shiite Muslim communities who have sought refuge among them, as Israeli bombardment flattened Shiite towns, according to local Christian, Druze, and Shiite leaders who spoke to the New York Times. So, you know,
mhm,
it's
mhm.
It's Inglorious Bastards. That's
Yeah,
what's going on, is them
Mm.
coming around and they're saying, we're going to knock on your doors. You better not be hiding anybody.
right. And they just came out with this death penalty law at the
That's what I'm talking.
Knesset, right?
Well, that's
That they're
related to
going
that.
to
Okay.
murder any Palestinian, but not
Palestinians, yeah.
Jews. I mean, it's just
Unbelievable.
That's
horrifying.
that's what I'm talking about. So
Right.
that's what I'm saying about the Wannsee conference, because the guys went in, and there are many photos out there of these. I don't know what their role is. They're, official leaders in some capacity, but they're walking into the
Mhm.
meeting and they have these gold pins on their lapels, but it's nooses. They're
Oh,
golden nooses. And it's
yes,
like, let's put it into
yes.
the
And
context
they're
of
going to hang
reality.
these Palestinians. That's
Correct.
the
It's
thing. They'll all be hung without any trial,
correct.
Yeah, it's
any
unbelievable.
appeal. And yeah, hang them. And that's terrorism, is what
Oh, it's
state
awful. I
terrorism.
put
That
a link. I put the link back in the chat for people. Jen Henson asked me, "Do I know Al Puppet?" No, I've never heard that name, Jen. I'm sorry. Sounds like it was somebody back then. But so we put the chat out there. We'd like to hear from you. Good to have Ellen here. But yeah, I just I love having people like Dana on because again, she needs a bigger platform. I
yeah.
need a bigger platform,
What?
and we do have to stick together and try to root for each other.
No, I
Yeah.
mean, I agree. And I think that, it's everybody has their niches, right? Like, I'm not out here, pretending to be an expert on geopolitical conflict. But again, you ask yourself, when we study these historical tragedies, and I mean, there's an argument to be made even about Latin America, all the coups and death and terror that we've caused, right? That's been sanctioned by us. Um,
Yes.
where you see these things, and it's like, you wonder if you would have, I don't care that the hippie movement wasn't organic. It doesn't matter. They still went out and protested. Okay. Like,
Mhm.
would you go out and
Mhm.
stand up for what you believe in? Right. Like, you always wonder if you would do these things. And I think that the internet has changed the way in which we communicate, for better or worse. It has. And so it's the fact that
Mhm.
there's so many people just acting like this isn't going on, because that's the meeting that I'm talking about, where I'm comparing it to the Wannsee conference. That is
Mhm.
the meeting where they determined, yes, we're going to pass this. They have 90 days and they get to hang everybody. And for those that aren't familiar with the Wannsee conference, I highly recommend a movie. It was released in 2001. It's on Amazon Prime. It's called Conspiracy. It is excellent. There's excellent actors in it, and the entire movie is just based off of the single surviving transcript from the Wannsee conference. And this is where you will see, because again, Israel's being very braggadocious about all of this. They're popping bottles of champagne, they're
Mhm.
celebrating, but I will give the Nazis a little bit of credit for 5 seconds. At least they tried to hide it from the world, right? They tried to
Mhm.
hide it. They tried to keep it a secret to the best of their ability, right? And again, how reviled and repulsed would we be if we saw old footage from that era where they're like, "Oh, we're going to bring the TV crews out here to come and look at our camps and tour our facilities, and we're going to pop champagne and all of that." It's, people should be repulsed. I mean, this is a disgusting week for humanity, and I don't like getting on my soapbox, but I think, I had like my breaking point the other night where I just like started crying, and I'm just like, Jesus,
Well,
like,
it's
it is
I think
happening again. It's just
Mhm.
almost everybody that watches this show was a supporter of Trump at one time, at least when he first came out, they were attracted to what he was saying. Ellen wasn't. Well, good, congratulations to you. Most people were fooled, I mean, at least in 2016. And at this time, it's now come to the point where it really looks like I call him an actor, or call it the Trumpetstein Project. I think he's an actor, but he's taken such a dark turn, and such a term where if he doesn't have dementia, he's really acting like it. He's a great actor, but really disturbing turn. And you don't know what he's going to say next, but it's childish. It's over the top, cheering when people die and saying it's fun to bomb Iranian, just stuff never has been done before. And now everybody's being fired, and he's bringing people in. So it's like he's a WWE bad guy, and he's a WWE Hall of Famer. Remember that. It's like he's a WWE bad guy, and you can't stop the bad guys in WWE from they do such over the top bad stuff. That's what he's doing now. It's so over the top, and it's like, wait a minute,
Mhm.
and the Democrats who were trying to impeach him for nothing the first time, a phone call to the Ukraine and stuff, they're not doing anything now. They're just
Well,
sitting there, oh
it's the
well, you know, this and that.
dialectic.
Yeah.
It's literally the dialectic. It's again, it's these people that are in power that have influence, they don't believe in anything. I mean, I remember like Hillary versus Trump, and that was the last time that I voted. And honestly, I just wanted to troll my friends. And so, because all of them were like, oh, it's gonna be a woman. And like I voted for Trump the first time, but like I didn't really care. I didn't have an emotional investment in it because I do see all of this as political theater. It doesn't matter who it is, and that includes the propagandists as well. Um, I think that, with Don, it is astute for people to remember he's an actor. He was on TV. The term kayfabe exists for a reason, right?
Yeah.
They're going to do what is either most beneficial financially at the end of the day or what is going to keep their family alive at the end of the day. And, I mean, we have Jared Kushner, who's, essentially running business for like Saudi Arabia out of the White House. I think that's extremely sus. In this whole like
Mhm.
re-envisioning, Gaza project. It's like, guys, we're in an element that we haven't really seen. And, the other side, again, I just think that this shows that it's two sides of the same coin. When you're seeing all this play out, I don't understand how people still hold this belief that these people actually
Mhm.
care or that they're actually invested or committed to the modern citizen, the common
Well,
people of today. They aren't.
They
They
don't.
are they are
you're right.
dedicated to their
Yeah,
constituents and donors.
you're right, but I do think that we're gonna be at a critical mass here because, I've always said when I was talking about Trump, I said, "The important thing is what comes after Trump." Because whatever he is, I think he's an actor, and he was assigned to divide the country, and he's
Mhm.
incredibly well. He's definitely won. That's winning for that. He definitely has done that. So, the population is pretty much split or was pretty much split. Everybody either hated I was a Trump agnostic, I said for years. It was the smallest minority group in the world. Now, with his recent turn, he's lost, I don't know how many of much of his support, but a lot of it. So there's a lot more that hate him, I think, than love him now. But all those people that voted for him, 70, 80 million, however many more, those people are all awake to some degree to the corruption, to something. They know something's wrong. What's gonna happen after them? Because now the guy that was this was your Goldstein, Imaginal Goldstein from I compared him to that in 1984. This was your opposition. This is who you're trying to. You don't like things where they are? Go to this guy, Trump. You have nobody else. Now that he's gonna be gone and he's proven to be a complete fake and the greatest disappointment, political betrayal in the history of the world, where do they go next? There's and
Wow.
so I hope maybe they finally decide this Republican nonsense and form a new party, and they did, but what do I do? Their voting is worthless, obviously. So, what do you guys think of that?
I think that okay, so this was going to be a hot take, but my mother, God rest her soul, she deeply believed in QAnon, right?
Oh yes, yes, yeah,
And there are still a lot of people that do.
yeah.
This is just an observable fact, depending on where you look at on the internet. That whole operation, I'm not getting into the specifics of the machinations and its origins or, everybody involved. However, we all know that Michael Flynn is involved in that network, and so is Steve Bannon. It's fascinating that Michael Flynn, spoke at that Catholic convention that Candace also just recently spoke at.
Catholic,
So
yeah, yeah.
there's another January 6th connection between her and her husband, right? I think that there's something to be said there, but we also have Steve Bannon. I think that it's going to kind of be up in the air as far as some sort of strange coup d'etat. Or I think that the backup plan, at least in my opinion, is that it was always going to be the thing to put in Trump and take out Trump because we have JD Vance, which is Peter Thiel's pony boy, right? I mean, we're
Mhm.
essentially, I mean, people say the United States of Israel. I say it's the United States of Palantir. And I'm not saying that they're the only company that is running the security apparatus, but they are certainly one of the most powerful. And it's like JD Vance had to kiss the ring of Les Wexner in order to get into his political power in Ohio. So I think that this has always been the conclusion. I just think that people, the public needed to be groomed a little bit into accepting Vance and, his authority or position of power. And I don't think that it was ever in the long run for Don, because again, it's either going to be the weird sort of let's do a revolt, because these people are calling for this, including John Mappin, Michael Flynn, Steve Bannon. They're calling for another revolt, basically a redo of January 6th. They're trying to paint it as this very strange sort of like tax revolt. They're comparing it to like the Tea Party. And again, we have Vallely on the board of Turning Point USA. What does he know about this stuff? Because he specializes in psychological warfare and subversive activities. So I think it's either going to be that, or it's just going to be JD Vance is going to take over, and you're going to get your brain chip in the mail. I don't really know what to tell people.
Yeah, and Steve Bannon now has been outed. One of the most intriguing things about the Epstein emails, and I published 3-part article on Substack about it, but shocked that how close of an ally he was to Epstein. There one letter where he's bragging back about how, and again, this is what he's pretending to be. He's pretending to be the exact opposite. He's bragging about getting John Bolton appointed. Now, Bolton is considered a tremendous opponent of MAGA. That was a terrible betrayal, one of Trump's worst appointments. Well, Bannon, who is considered an ally, is bragging to Epstein about, yeah, I got Bolton appointed. And again, they're making the cutesy talk back and forth. Clearly, he was an insider. So what is Bannon? I mean, Bannon, he was my old friend Naomi Wolf, who I'm sure is probably not my friend now because I'm writing on Israel, and her Zionism's really kicked in. I don't think she's going to be writing any more forwards to my books. But that's where she kind of made her comeback. When she kind of transitioned to the right, Bannon had her on the war room constantly. And so, yeah, you're right. There's so many odd bedfellows and stuff, and it's impossible to know who to trust. But all we can do is, be. Ellen recently tried. Ellen ran for Congress.
Yeah, right.
Oh, did you? Good for
y'all
you.
should run. You should run too. We need to all run. It really does.
I look like a felon, Ellen. They wouldn't elect me.
No,
good for
you're
you.
beautiful.
That's fantastic.
I always think that was always wondered why journalists weren't running for office, and I think they're probably keep you out on purpose. That
of course.
That's what. Yeah, I ran as a Democrat, and I knew that it was all controlled. But now we really need to organize a third party, or I'm with the truthactionproject.org. That's why we were on Don's show at first. But I think we need something like a Truth Action Party, and it's hard to do. There's a lot of numbers, but, you got to get signatures. But now is the time to do it from March to June. And it has to be done. The public is so hungry for it. The young people, that's how I had to get 1,500 signatures just to get on the ballot. And
well, Alan, at some point, it's reaching critical mass because again, 70 to 80 million people that voted for Trump. Some of them are, and Dana, you're right. I mean, the guy I had on last week, very nice guy. I sensed there was some queue there. He didn't go into too much, but I could sense there was still a little queue, and there's still people that believe that. But again, that's the desperation. That was a psyop they threw out there to try to explain why Trump wasn't doing anything. 2 more weeks, trust the plan, and all that. Here we go, one, we go all that stuff. And now that's all they have. I mean, it's been discredited, obviously, but what else are you going to hang your hat on now? What else can you say about Trump at this point except, well, he's intentionally exposing Israel. Everybody knows about him now. All this crazy stuff they say that he's doing the exact opposite of. That's all they have, and those people are going to be so crushed when he finally leaves office. However, and I'm still not leaving it out that they may not take him out, carried away in a straitjacket, kicking and screaming. I think that could be the end of the production, maybe, to make all the people with TDS happy. But where did he go? They had all these high hopes. Trump did nothing he said he was going to do. I just filed my taxes yesterday, and he lied so much about that. The changes he made did nothing. Nothing. They made no difference at all. And, it's so you see in real time, and, where's the $5,000 Doge refund? All the things. I might get rid of income taxes. Maybe we'll get rid of the IRS. All this, when you throw those things out there that much, I don't think the American people are so pacified. I don't think they could revolt if they wanted to. I just don't think they can do it. It's not in them.
Well,
But,
Well,
you
oh, go
know,
ahead.
it's the Rothschilds, that really, the Rothschild Bank of International Settlement, the intelligence agencies, deep state that are, doing the controlled opposition between the right and the left, the Dems and the Republicans. So it's up to us to, to expose that. And that's where I think that Epstein's connection, there's that video where he says, I represent Rothschild to
yeah, he's bragging about
right, and
names. Yes.
if that gets exposed, and then we could actually follow the money, right, using people. So I don't know, your Dana, is that right, rolling
Yes.
Jules, exposing the truth. It always goes back to this Rothschild, deep state, and we don't have a Justice Department that will prosecute them, or the CIA. We've got, so the news people like y'all are, and we're all we have. And that's why it is
It's
frustrating that we don't have the reach and the platform that we
no, and
should
and
have,
and and, like, if what I'm experiencing, other people experience too, that this shadow banning makes it certain that people like me and others will not have that platform. Because if you can't access X at all, if when you I mean, every time I try to post on Facebook, I can post whatever I want about somebody's birthday or something about a family, that's fine. I can get hundreds of responses. But if I try to post anything about my work, anything about an interview, boom, nothing. And that's what they do. It's it, my book, Masking the Truth, was I think my most important book. Barnes& and Noble just disappears it. It's gone.
hmm
Amazon disappeared the Kindle
oh
version.
yeah.
It's gone. There's no explanation. The libraries, I've had
Well, they
lots of people try to, it's a they hold down the platforms. Even this show, I mean, it hasn't happened today, but many times I interviewed Cynthia McKinney a week ago, and a couple times there where we just started talking about something, boom, her connection was gone.
hmm
I mean, I don't know if
oh
that,
yeah,
I am paranoid, but it seems
we
like
have
there's
to
no
have
good connection.
an independent media. The platform has to be, regulated as a utility, because it's they privatized it basically, and then basically have privatized everything, and like, it's going to be good for us, and you've got to have a public utility. Right. And that's why we need to get the federal communication, expose the Federal Communication Commission and the fairness doctrine, how it was sabotaged, and
Right.
to giving, the power to the
Well, that's
banks
what
and the
they would
CIA. Mhm.
they would love to have an FCC for the internet. It kills them that they don't, because then none of us would be talking about any of this stuff if they had the FCC
Correct.
here. So they hate that. I mean, they hate the fact of blogs, and they must really hate Substack, because that's the only place where I'm starting to reach more people. Pretty
Yeah.
much. I mean, it's still limited, but that's the only place so far. It's a free speech platform. They hate the idea of average, just run of the mill people, the common riffraff, getting on there and typing out your thoughts, not filtered. There's no talking head explaining, well, this is what he technically means. They hate that. They don't want that. And Chris Graves, by the way, I saw you try to get in the chat room. I tried to put you in, but you disappeared. So come
Yeah,
back.
no, I agree, and I think that my only pushback with Q would be, just from what I've seen, particularly, Epstein is kind of the gift that keeps on giving, unfortunately, and I think that that's a, metaphorical carrot that they're dangling in front of the population that is the horse. Um, there's a lot of very big name influencers, people that do run in certain circles, including circles that are close to current leadership, where Steve Bannon is being painted as running some sort of white hat operation, for
Mhm.
all of this, and that it was, whatever, he was there trying to get information. So I don't think that we should totally throw out the Q people just yet, because again, if you're looking in certain circles, and it's odd, that makes sense to me though. It's a lot of very wealthy Scientologists, a lot of people surrounding January 6th, that these people are calling for another January 6th. And again, I don't think that it was, an actual insurrection. I think it was, a Fed operation. Um, I mean, the rest of it, it's like I don't really believe that there's a political solution. I'm apolitical. I think that things have come too far, and that the system is broken. It's like you got to start over. And I think, like, specifically, I wasn't really invested in following any of this in any meaningful way, but you had brought up the stuff with Doge, and it's like, well, I think that that was a way of, again, getting the public to co-sign, Elon as being someone that could be trustworthy, and that,
Yeah.
was on the side of the common man. And,
Mhm.
if you're paying attention, and I tell people and they don't
Mhm.
believe me until after the fact, you need to keep your eyes on the state of Louisiana, because Elon Musk is causing a lot of problems down there. And I think the reason why he chose Louisiana is twofold. I think one, because it's the only state in all 50 states that operates under Napoleonic law. And also, it's prime for corruption. So there is some legal separation. And for the people that want to say that that's not how the criminal code works, yes, it is. When you actually look at it and the rules of prosecution and evidence, Napoleonic law can still operate there. So I think that that gives him a bit of leeway as far as federal jurisdiction for certain things. But, like, there's crime families down there, including the Marcello crime family, the mafia family that run down there. He's opening up multiple data centers in Louisiana, and he's opening them up all over the country. I think that that's part of what the Doge stuff was for, was to just get him in with people emotionally and psychologically. And okay, this guy's going to help, right? He's selling you a promise. Well, no, what he's actually doing is he's running around and he's putting these data centers everywhere. And God bless the people of Louisiana
Yeah.
that they are starting to cause trouble. They are protesting outside of their courthouses. And some of this is getting into the news because they're not hiring locals. They're not hiring anybody within the community, because why
Yeah.
would they? Why would you invest in the community and make it something that's beneficial for everybody and beneficial
Mm.
for those future generations, where a lot of those people, if we're being honest, where he's doing it, it's ethnic and, economically disparate populations. But instead, he's bringing in a bunch of immigrants. I'm not going to have the immigrant conversation with people. And some of those people, I know people down there. Some of those people are there illegally and they've been shipped away. You should invest in the local community. I understand that, technology is complicated for a lot of people. Yeah, it would take a little bit of extra effort, but he's doing this all over the country. And there are
Mhm.
rumors in certain circles that, that the military will be operating and is operating allegedly already out of some of these data centers. The way that they're
Yeah, that's
doing it
very
is
Well, that,
to
I
is to
worked in a
obscure it
data
from the
center for
public.
a long time. It's very strange. So I want to make sure we get
Yeah.
Chris. This is a completely different subject, but Chris is, he loves the Vegas shooting. What do you think of the Vegas shooting, Danny? Do you have any information about that?
I mean, I don't have anything unique. I think it's
Yeah.
one of those situations where it's why have people forgotten about that? It was very
It's one of the
clearly
main
a
things.
domestic terrorism operation. Uh,
Chris also talks about the McMartin tunnels, which I touched on a little bit before. We know there were tunnels there. They discovered that afterwards, after they smeared the
yeah.
kids and made fun of everything. Good to see
Mhm.
RB Ham in the chat. RB, I'm going to be um, on his show tomorrow night. I can't, I'm zoning out on the name of the guest. He's a big shot. Aguilar or something. What, RB Ham, put it in the chat. Who's the
Mm.
main guest tomorrow? I'm going to say
Tony
maybe
Aguilar, Anthony,
Anthony
the
Aguilar. Yeah, yeah. So
mhm.
RB Ham's getting some big names, and he always includes me, so I appreciate it. He's my friend from the Great Wide North, very courageous. One of the
Mhm.
Canadian truckers of the convoy. They went after him. They claimed Anthony Aguilar. That'll
Mhm.
be tomorrow at 8 o'clock, I think, right? Or be 8 p.m. Eastern. Beyond the Pale on his Rumble channel, Beyond the Pale. So it's growing. he's trying to grow too, doing a good job, and I'm grateful to be there all the time. So we only got about 5 minutes left.
Don,
Dana is
could I
yeah,
just, I think Peter Thiel, when you talk about the
yeah.
AI and the data centers, we've got to expose Peter Thiel, and that's why I like Whitney Webb
He's
so
also
much.
in the he's in
Right?
the Epstein files all over the place too. Peter Thiel's everywhere.
And he on that he was telling Epstein was telling Barack, I'll put you on Peter Thiel's board on the Palantir
Yeah,
in
yeah.
2014. If he has that kind of power, there's more to the story of that. If we could bring them all down at the same time, this we wouldn't be going to the moon and the Mars and you know um
You know what's a
and
really good
If we had
question to
honest
ask about Peter
representatives,
Thiel?
there. eh,
what
Go ahead. I
What's
was
that?
going to say, do you know what's a good question to ask about Peter Thiel that no one seems to want to ask?
Yeah.
Candace Owens partied at Peter Thiel's house. There's photos
Oh,
of it. She's there.
really?
Yes.
Wow.
Isn't that fascinating?
You're good,
Um,
Dana. You are great. It's really roles in reverse because you're pretty much doing to Candace Owens what she did to Erica Kirk. It's amazing.
well, unfortunately,
hmm
I could do it to Whitney Webb too, but I'm not going to because she's the golden calf that nobody's allowed to touch.
Let's touch a little bit because Whitney Webb, I love her work as well. She was on my show a couple times early on, and then she exploded. Now she hasn't answered my emails for a long time, but in fact, I had her on before Andrew Kaufman became kind of a celebrity in the COVID thing. And he came on my show first because nobody was inviting him yet. And then he exploded too. But Whitney Webb asked me, can I be on too? And I said, okay. And I haven't heard from her since, but yeah, you're right. She's on all the shows. She does good work, but she's got
hmm
wealth behind her. Say that. I don't know what else she has, but maybe
hmm
briefly you can tell us, Dan, if you can do it briefly.
I can't do it briefly. It's very complex and complicated, but I don't know why anybody would assume that the nature of Latin America, including Chile,
Yes.
that is where a lot of expats and intelligence tomfoolery goes on. And there's a lot of stuff that's been documented that including I can't think of the guy's name. There have been other journalists that they've been paid. You can see these correspondences. They've been paid to take these things down. But again, she is the sacred calf. And don't you notice that that's very interesting that there's a trend of primarily females within the sphere that you're not allowed to question? And again, it's a broken clock can be right twice a day. There is a question as to uh, you know, who did all of the heavy lifting? I do know some insider baseball. Again, it's not really relevant. I'm just saying in regards to Webb and with Candace as well. It's, just because they're women, if, with Candace in particular, she wants to come out here, she wants to make all these crazy ass claims, and she says that she's not a feminist, well, then it's like, question her back, be as aggressive. I think
Right.
that she wouldn't be as charitable if she sat there and somebody was using a massive platform to sit there and accuse, because she has accused people of some really crazy stuff in regards to the Erica Kirk thing. And in my opinion, this is a position that I've held since I dug into Candace, at the end of last year, is that she is serving the same role that Alex Jones did with Sandy Hook. Because what did Alex Jones ultimately accomplish? He made it illegal to ask questions about Sandy Hook. Candace Owens is on the path to make it illegal to ask questions about what happened to Charlie Kirk. I have held this opinion, and my opinion has not changed because, again, I do not see these people doing things that are tangible to exonerating or confirming Tyler Robinson's guilt. And that's taking out all of the emotion, all of the interpersonal relationship dynamics, all of the bullshit. It's not getting resolved. She's made a lot of crazy claims. I'm not a fan of lawfare. I think that it's a weak position to take when you try to silence someone for having an opinion about your criticizing your past. Because if you're out here, you should be open to scrutiny. However, she's going to make it illegal. She is doing to Charlie Kirk what Alex Jones did to Sandy Hook. Because again, people that actually think that Alex Jones was sued for like $1 billion, no, he wasn't. Again, look at the guy; he's thriving. If he's thriving more than he was before. He hasn't been deplatformed. None of these people have. And you have to ask why. It's not a matter of us doing self-flagellation and we have to take a vow of poverty. I don't like that take. I tell people, yeah, guess what? It's not free for us to do this. Don has to pay for, you know, a subscription to this streaming service right now, to StreamYard, to be able to do this. These things cost money. You know, newspaper subscriptions, Ancestry, these things cost money. You think that it should be free. And again, I don't necessarily disagree, but also put your money where your mouth is, okay? Support people if that is truly what you believe in, right? We're all flawed and human, but I think that those are conversations that, you know, us smaller folks should normalize having, because again, it's, you don't want to take the whole like it's all bots and they're a shill, and it's like, well, yeah, you know, some of them are very obviously shills, but you know, it's put your money where your mouth is. If you want things to change, be the change. Prop up the researchers, the journalists that
Absolutely.
are out here that are putting out the information that you think is important, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a video, a YouTube channel, a Substack, a blog, whatever. Like, do it. You see the algorithm shoving Whitney Webb. They're shoving Whitney Webb in your face just as much as they are Candace. I'm sorry. And Whitney doesn't have a channel, like, or maybe she does. I don't know. I haven't watched her in like 2 years.
I
But,
don't think so.
you know, they're putting them in the homepage. So do your part. If you want things to be different, fight the algorithm. That's how you do it. Promote other creators, whether they're talking about the thing that you want them to talk about. Sorry, not all of us are going to sit here and talk in circles about Israel all day. You know, there are people that are much smarter than me. I'm certainly not going to do it. I have my opinions. I try to look at everything from all sides, but people do have their niches. But you have to build up the community that you want to see. Otherwise, the shit ain't going to change. And you get Candace Owens, and you get Ian Carroll, and you get Tucker, and you get Whitney Webb, and you get what you deserve. Okay? It is what it is.
But we're almost out of time. It says Jody Taylor says, Miss Jules, when are you going to have a new video on YouTube?
I'm going to be going live, I think on Tuesday. I took a break. So.
Oh, that's cool. Give Ellen, give out any links or anything you want, and then I'm going to let you, Dana. And
Right.
you have anything you want
I'm
to
on
promote, Ellen?
Substack, Ellen Corley, or Ellen Corley on, you know, all social media. So, but thank you, Don, and it's so nice to meet you. I'll follow you now.
It was nice to meet you too.
Yes, right. Thank you.
Hopefully, you'll be able to follow me again at some point, because my ex thing is I have to create a new account. Dana, give out
Always.
your links or anything you want to promote. You're wonderful. It's great having you on this. I have to have you back.
No, thank you guys for having me. I'm Rotting Jules on YouTube, Instagram, Patreon, and Dana Duda on Twitter or X. And my podcast is What is the Process, available on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen. It's up there somewhere.
Well, that's great. It's great having you. You're a real journalist, and you're doing real journalism. There's not many out there that are. So I hope more people support you. We do have to stick together and try to fight this tyranny, because it's something. I'm battling now to keep my platforms. Please subscribe to me on Substack, Donald Jeffries at Substack.com. I protest just like this podcast. Thanks, Ellen. Thanks for coming on, Dana. Thanks so much for being on. We'll have to get together, because I want to hear more. I want to hear more about Whitney Webb and everything else when we have a chance. So
Okay.
thanks so much. Thanks everybody for listening. I protest. It's Good Friday. Happy Easter to everyone.
Yes.
See you next week. Take care.